When you understand the game, fear disappears. Sometimes fear doesn't arrive with a scream, it whispers. Like a cold breeze slipping through the crack of an ordinary day, you don't notice it right away. It takes shape slowly, hiding in the hesitation that freezes your choices, in the exhaustion that lingers long after rest, in the endless scrolling that numbs what you know you should be doing. Fear, most of the time, doesn't come from what's happening, but from what you can't quite understand. It doesn't feed on real danger, but on the quiet confusion your mind creates when life feels too uncertain. Your brain, built to protect you, sees uncertainty as a threat. It's been like this since we lived in forests and listened for predators in the dark. But today, the predator wears different clothes. It looks like a difficult conversation, a change you know you need to make, a no you're too afraid to say. And before you realize it, you've entered a quiet cycle, your mind trying to control what it doesn't yet understand. And in the process of trying to control, it makes more noise, more stories, more panic. It becomes a game of constant defense. You're moving, yes, but not forward. But what if the real problem isn't fear itself? What if the real problem is not understanding the game you're playing? Because the truth is, fear changes when you understand what's actually happening inside you, when you switch the light on, when you realize that the maze is still there, but now you can see the way out. That's the shift. That's when panic becomes clarity, when your heart races but your presence holds, because now you see the game, and over the next few minutes that's what we're going to do. We're going to turn on that light. Not to erase fear, but to see what it's trying to show you. Because safety isn't born from control, it's born from understanding. And understanding changes everything. Fear is not the enemy. Ignorance about it is. Fear isn't broken. It isn't your flaw or your failure. It's not the sign that something's wrong with you. Fear is a signal, a pure, powerful signal from the deepest layers of your being, meant to protect, not punish. But somewhere along the way, we started reading that signal all wrong. We stopped seeing fear as guidance and started treating it like a defect. And when we don't understand something, we fight it. We run from it. We label it as weakness. The real issue isn't the fear itself, it's the confusion around it. The invisible mistake so many of us make is confusing discomfort with danger, as if feeling uneasy means we're not ready, or not capable, or not safe. But not all discomfort is a threat. Some of it is growth in disguise. Some of it is the brain stretching beyond its habits. The truth is, your brain evolved to avoid risk, not to understand possibility. It's scanning constantly for patterns that resemble past pain. That's how anticipatory anxiety is born. The neocortex starts creating scenarios, trying to outsmart the unknown, but it only creates more fear, more noise, more paralysis. Yet studies show that people trained in what's called situational awareness, those who understand their internal and external environment clearly, react to fear completely differently. They don't eliminate it, they reframe it, because fear doesn't shrink in silence. It shrinks when it's seen for what it really is, a part of you asking for clarity, not control. And that clarity doesn't come from fighting or fleeing, it comes from updating the mental map you're using. Because if you're using an old map, one built in survival mode, you'll keep seeing threats where there are only unknowns. And unknowns are not always danger, they are invitations. Invitations to step differently, to pause, to learn, to move with awareness instead of panic. So maybe fear isn't your enemy, maybe it's your teacher, but only if you're willing to listen. You're playing in survival mode without realizing it. There's a way of living that looks like being productive, looks like being responsible, looks like being in control, but underneath it's driven by something else entirely, survival. And survival doesn't always look like panic. Sometimes it looks like overcommitting, like saying yes to everything, like staying constantly busy but never truly fulfilled. It's a mode where your brain isn't asking, what do I want? But what might go wrong if I stop? In survival mode, the brain narrows its focus. It becomes obsessed with loss, with threat, with avoiding failure. This is what neuroscience calls the scarcity mindset. It's not just about money or resources, it's a pattern of perception. Your nervous system starts interpreting everything as a possible danger. Every delay feels like disaster. Every unknown feels like risk. And every day becomes a race, not toward meaning, but away from imagined harm. There's a hidden mechanism running this, dopamine. Not the kind that comes from joy or creativity, but the kind triggered by fear, by urgency, by constant checking. This misregulated dopamine doesn't give you energy, it drains you, it reinforces the panic. And so, without knowing it, your days, become an exhausting loop of defense. Not creation. You're not building, you're bracing. You can start to notice it in the small signals. The way you expect things to go wrong, the way you prepare for disappointment before it even arrives, the way you can't rest even when there's time. That's not failure. That's conditioning. It's your nervous system trying to protect you, but doing so based on a world that no longer exists. And here's the metaphor that reveals everything. You're trying to win a chess match, as if you're playing hide and seek. The rules don't match the game, so of course you feel stuck. Of course nothing seems to work, because the strategy that once kept you safe is now keeping you small. What no one told you about control. It's the biggest creator of fear. The more you try to control everything, the more afraid you become. It sounds like a paradox, but it's the truth, because the search for total control isn't a sign of strength. It's often a sign of fear disguised as responsibility. It comes from the illusion that safety is something you can manufacture, that if you plan every detail, anticipate every outcome, manage every person and every variable, then maybe you won't get hurt. But that's not how safety works. That's not how peace is built. Real peace comes not from certainty outside, but from coherence inside. It's not about making the world predictable. It's about making your presence stable, even when nothing else is. And the more you chase control, the more fragile you become. Because now, every surprise is a threat. Every deviation is a disaster. You've created a reality where the only acceptable path is the one you already know. And that rigidity doesn't protect you. It exhausts you. It creates a life where flexibility feels like failure, and letting go feels like danger. But there's another way, a way that doesn't reject structure, but transforms your relationship with the unknown. It's called active surrender, not the passive kind that gives up, but the conscious kind that reads the moment instead of resisting it. That's what elite performers, special forces, and even trauma-informed therapies teach. You don't collapse when you stop controlling. You expand, because now you're using your energy to respond, not react. You're not holding your breath through every wave. You're learning to surf. The surfer never controls the ocean. He studies it. He moves with it. He doesn't need to tame the sea because he's mastered himself. And in that mastery, the fear doesn't vanish. It quiets, because now it knows you're listening. Understanding the game is a neuro-emotional practice, not a pretty idea. Clarity isn't something you stumble upon. It's something you train for. Understanding the game, the real, invisible game your nervous system is playing, is not a poetic idea to write on sticky notes. It's a practice. It's something that happens inside your body, in your breath, in the space between your reactions. Because this isn't just about mindset. It's about wiring. It's about teaching your brain a new way to interpret the world. When fear hits, your body responds before your thoughts can explain. That's biology. So the shift begins not with thinking differently, but with regulating differently, breathing differently, grounding your senses, bringing your attention back from the storm of what-ifs to the calm of what is. Techniques like tactical breathing, feeling your feet on the ground, and naming what you're sensing, these are not tricks. They are anchors. They remind your system that this moment is not a threat, that this discomfort is survivable, that you are not in danger even when it feels like you are. And it's not about doing this once. It's about repetition, because the nervous system doesn't respond to logic, it responds to familiarity. The more you show it calm in the face of fear, the more it believes you, the more you return again and again to a practice of presence. The stronger that presence becomes. That's neuroplasticity, not just rewiring how you think, but how you feel what you think. One of the simplest and most profound rituals you can create is the 5-minute observer moment. Once a day, no judgment, no fixing, just noticing. What thought is repeating? What sensation keeps returning? What fear is underneath that silence? It's not about solving anything. It's about seeing clearly. And clarity, slowly, becomes safety. Understanding the game isn't about memorizing more quotes. It's about updating your internal software, rewriting how your system responds to uncertainty. And the more you practice this, the more something begins to shift. You stop reacting from fear, you start responding from presence, and that changes everything. The metaphor that disarms fear. You are not the character, you are the player. Fear becomes unbearable when you forget who you are. Not in a poetic sense, but in a practical one. When you mistake your role for your identity, your failures for your worth, your emotions for your essence, fear finds space to grow. It grows in the tightness of a self-image that leaves no room for movement, no room for contradiction, no room for change. Your brain builds your sense of self through narrative, through repetition, through stories that say, I'm this kind of person, or I always react this way, or I'm not built for that. These stories aren't facts. They're habits of perception, and the danger is not in having them. It's in believing they are the whole truth. Because when you believe you are only the character, the employee, the partner, the achiever, the perfectionist, then fear becomes a threat to your very identity. Any disruption to that role feels like danger, but you're not the character. You're the player, the one holding the controller, the one who can pause, zoom out, choose again, the one who can say, this move didn't work, I'll try a different one. You're not trapped on the board. You move the pieces. That realization doesn't make fear disappear, but it makes it lighter, because now it's not attacking your essence. It's just informing your next step. There's a story of a woman who lived by control, a high-level executive who managed her team, her schedule, even her family with precision, until the day life threw something at her that she couldn't schedule, couldn't fix, couldn't control. And for a while it broke her, but slowly, through discomfort and silence, she realized something essential. She wasn't the identity she had built. She was the awareness behind it. And in that awareness, she found peace, not because everything made sense, but because she stopped needing it to. Fear is the reaction of the character. Clarity is the command of the player. And the moment you remember that, the moment you reclaim that seat, something changes. The fear might still knock on your door, but it no longer decides where you live. Fear doesn't vanish because life became easier. It dissolves because you began to see it differently. That's the shift. That's the quiet revolution. When you understand the game, when you truly grasp how your brain, your body, and your identity interact, the chaos outside doesn't get smaller, but your clarity inside grows stronger, and that clarity changes everything. There is a profound difference between control and understanding. Control is rigid. It needs the world to obey. Understanding is fluid. It allows the world to unfold. When you understand the system, you stop fighting it. You stop demanding guarantees. You start reading patterns, sensing rhythm, moving with discernment instead of desperation. And that change, from struggle to strategy, from panic to presence, doesn't make you superhuman. It makes you real, grounded, awake. It invites you to live not from fear of what might collapse, but from trust in your ability to respond. That's not blind faith, that's earned awareness. And it begins always with noticing, because fear in the end is not your enemy. It's the sound of an alarm inside a system you didn't program. But here's the truth no one teaches you. Soon enough, you can open the panel, you can change the settings, you can turn the volume down, not by silencing the signal, but by adjusting its meaning. The fear doesn't need to disappear, it just needs to serve you better. The alarm isn't broken, it's just sensitive. And understanding the game is how you recalibrate it, not by force, not by avoidance, but with insight. Because when you understand the game, the fear loses its grip, not because it stopped ringing, but because you finally know what it's been trying to say.